How has this changed you? Because I know we've all gone through so many things afterwards.
One word, fundamentally. I mean, it's hard to quantify it or qualify it, the change, because life did happen after, right? Like I had two more births after Noah's death. And you know, and life just got complicated, right? Like life just continued. And so I don't know, I can't tell you how much has changed me, because I don't, like, you know, I don't know which is what, like what came from the grief. Right now, when as you're mentioning the trust piece, you know, one of the things that did happen for me that in the absence of that, I can't imagine the absence of it, because it was so truly impactful. And it did, you know, my midwife was deposed, and I had to be in that room when she was being deposed, and with all the attorneys, you know, I had to be deposed for, like, I think it was over 3 days, and she was deposed over 4 days. And there were key moments in that deposition that were, I had to prepare for the worst, because I didn't know what was going to come out. I didn't know what she was going to answer, what she was going to say. But one of the things that they did ask her, she's, you know, and I broke down whenever she answered. And that goes to tell you the turmoil I had been. I was expecting my second son, my third child, second son, when she was being deposed. So this is a process that took 3 years at least to get to that place where we were in the room deposing her. They asked her, you know, what it was a question, something like, what about Catherine? Like, what would you like to say about Catherine during labor and before labor? And what would you like to say? And I mean, I was holding my breath. And that just goes to tell you the amount of trust that she still had at that time, right? Like whatever she said was going to impact me. And she, you know, she answered, she said, you know, Catherine did everything she needed to do to bring her baby safely into the world. There was nothing she did not do. And she said, and everything I asked her to do, she did. And that was a huge moment, right? Because of all the questions that I had up until that moment. What did I do wrong? I must have done something wrong. I must have done something wrong. What I realized about that, though, is the trauma that had been in my life leading up to Noah's birth, like the childhood trauma, the, you know, all the things, my ADHD, all those things about myself that I had, the stories and the messages that I had believed about myself were present in that moment and subsequently. What I realized is that I needed her to affirm me. And maybe if there's been a moment in my life that I've realized how toxic my dependence on what other people think and say about me is, it was at that moment. She had absolutely no credibility. She was a narcissist. I don't know her now. I have no idea if she's changed or not. She had a God complex. She banked on her ability to revive a baby. That's what happened. She banked on her ability to bring back a baby if she needed to. So her God complex. She, a risk taker a risk taker where risk is not rewarded, right? Taking a risk is not rewarded. There are other times that taking risks, are rewarded. This was not it. So all of these things about her character and it goes to tell you she should not have had any credibility in my life. I should have never cared as much as I did. But at that moment, I remember started crying. I started to cry because I felt absolved to some extent. And then I had to unpack that, right? And so when I think about how it's changed me, I think what it did is it opened my eyes to see some of the things that that led me to that moment of truly fully dependent on what this person with very few character qualities that I would consider valuable was going to say about me. And just to like tie it a little bit together, at the hospital, where I ended up after Noah's death. I'll never forget. It was like day 2, and I was in that bed like a mess, right? And in comes this person that I vaguely recognized, tiny little woman. And I saw her, and I'll never forget, she said, "Beth Simon." And I remembered that was my OBGYN that I left to go to my midwife. She saw my name come up she wasn't even at that hospital. She was at another hospital. But of course, everybody found out. It was pretty and she saw my name pop up. It was the same system of hospitals. And she said she saw her name as well. This, that I had been a patient of hers at some point. So after her shift, she took a cab to the hospital I was in, which is kind of far, and came. And she said, "I saw your name. I don't even know if you'll remember me, but I needed to come and just hug you." And she laid on that bed with me and held me for about 4 hours. And she just kept saying, because of course I was like, "I should never have left you. It was my fault. And she just kept saying, "You were never in charge. This birth was never up to you." And just, anyway, she delivered my other 2, and she's still a dear friend of mine. But I don't know, it goes to tell you, like, we left her because we didn't like her.
But like when it really counted, she was like the one that was really there,
That is something that I have realized over the years, is that looking back, that lady that I was like, she was so mean and she was such a jerk, probably, I mean, no matter what, I can't even say probably, she would have gave me better care. She would have taken care of me. Maybe she didn't have the best bedside manner, but the reality is my kid would be here. I wouldn't have gone overdue. Things wouldn't have gone the way that they went. So, and then I've met so many doctors since this has happened. I've met so many EMTs. I've met so many people around, our health and, medical and all stuff. And I can't tell you that I bumped into any of them and been like, that is a bad doctor. That is a bad, I can't say that, because before they even hear what happened, they're kind and they're in it because it's for a reason. You know what I mean? This is their career. This is their life, love kind of thing. But then explain what happened. And then they're like, a lot of them will say, "This was not your fault. This happens more often than you think." And some of that stuff, it wasn't until like my high risk doctor that I have now, I bumped into him after I lost Gavin from a lost group, because he goes around and he sounds kind of interesting, but he delivers rainbow babies is like his thing. Everybody knows him as the rainbow baby doctor. Like that's his thing. He really like helps. He's like the miracle doctor here in town. And I bumped into him at a event for loss, because that's what he did. He would attend all the loss events and meet all the moms and hug everybody and shake hands. And he was a really nice guy. And so I bumped into him, and one of my friends introduced it, was like, "She has a very interesting story to tell you." And so when I talked to him about everything, he was like, "Come see me," because I was like, "I'm never having a kid ever again." Like, that was my first kid. I'm never doing this again. Something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with my body. Something's wrong. I was so terrified to have a kid, which there's the other thing is like, afterwards, life is terrifying. Anxiety, depression, fear is things that I don't think I ever experienced any of that stuff like I experienced after losing my son. Like I was like, I can't do this again. I don't want to have another baby and maybe it could go that way. Like, I already know it can go that way. I don't want to do it. So meeting this other person who's like a super doctor in my community, he actually sat down, took the time out. And I remember having an appointment with him, which was so similar to what we would have like an appointment with our midwives, where you like sit down and have a chat with them. And he literally sat down and had a chat with me. Was like, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to examine all of this. I'm going to do all of this. We're going to go over all of this. And he literally held my hands and said, you're going to have another baby and everything is going to be fine. And I'm going to guarantee that this will never happen to you again. And because of him, I was like, I want to have another child. Like I want to move, like I want to do more, but I'm pretty sure I would have never got past levels of grief if it wasn't for him sitting down and going through. And he sat with my husband and helped him in ways that like both of us never experienced that, especially with like a medical person. Like you are kind of in and out really fast. Things are like within 5, 10, 15 minutes, but to have somebody really truly sit down and spend the time with us, like we were with him for a while, going over the details, going over all these things. And he was like, this is what happened. And he went over every single thing of why things went the way that they went. And that's something that I feel like in the other side, they don't go over that. They're like, okay, it was the way that it was. But the medical side, they do go over like why it happened and explain. And then they're like, now we're never going to do that again. We can prevent this. We're not going to do that. So it's a whole nother world. But I can say, I mean, obviously it's like, it's been 8 years, but since Gavin, I feel like life is very isolating than it was before. If I could put like a word to it, that would be my word, because before him, I was extremely social. I worked at casinos. If anybody knows, if you go to Vegas, casinos have thousands of employees. And I worked on the floor and behind, and I worked all over. So I knew a lot of people before I ever had him and while I was pregnant with him. And I was always out doing stuff, always going places like with friends and with meeting people. Like I was extremely, extremely social. I was in my 20s. I just really enjoyed life, I guess you could say. And after him, I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to see anyone. I still to this day struggle with picking up my phone to make a phone call. I struggle with people calling me. If first off, I don't answer any phone number unless I know the name that pops up. So any random number I don't answer, just it's a thing. I actually was doing that before we had all the scam crap that happens now, because I live in fear of answering the phone and somebody asking, how are you doing? Because I never know the answer all the time. Like sometimes I know the answer and sometimes I don't. And sometimes I don't want to tell someone how I'm doing. So I really avoided common conversations with people. And the small talk that you have with people when you go out places, like you go to dinner with friends or something, like doesn't feel the same as what it did before, because the meaning of life and every day and how short everything feels and how fast time just goes by, it feels like it's just like, I don't want to say it's like a waste of time, but that's what it feels like. Cause you're just like time's like going by, and I feel like we should be doing something more important. I don't know what that is, but I feel like we have to be like doing something more, because it's like, we're running out of time. So my life has changed in a way of like trust and relationships big time, and how I am in the world of anything, because I have to say, like the biggest leap that I've made since Gavin was making this channel. Like, this is gigantic. Like I literally just jumped off a cliff making a YouTube channel because I still struggle with people calling me on the phone. like it's like, but I'm like, okay, I'll get up I'll get on and film with people. But there is like that level of like, this was extremely hard for me to do, because it means I have to kind of like face the reality of my life. And what people don't understand is, as much as we move forward and maybe we have other kids, or maybe we live our life in certain ways, or maybe we do whatever we do, we are always going to have one foot there with where our child is that's not here with us, and one foot in the present moment. So it's like you're always on that balancing line. And that's what I've always noticed, like in my life anyways. It took me a long time to get there because I didn't understand it. It's like there's always part of me with my son that's not here. And then there's always a part of me trying to live as best as I can into the present moments of life.